Hi. So, how's everybody? How have you been enjoying this video series so far? What has shown up for you as you've been identifying these elements of living in your life, where they've shown up, where you've shut them down, where you've been willing to communicate with them and having them contribute to your life, and where you haven't been willing to play with these energies so far yet? Um, yeah, let me know. And if you're here, go ahead and say hi. I'm coordinated with my inner child. We got this coordination going on. I don't have the hat because I want you to be able to see me. And that's part of why I chose this picture, because a lot of us aren't willing to look at our inner children. We're hiding them away. We're doing this Michael Jackson move with it. Or I don't know if you guys remember that he would do that with his hats. Today, yes, we're talking about the inner child. This is the way we're going to end this run of the series. Maybe we'll continue it or pick it up again another time if you would like. Just a reminder that these elements of living we've been talking about come from the living and dying body process that I created, and from my experiences personally and with my family, friends, clients, hundreds and I guess thousands at this point, clients over the years. And the clients who've received the living and dying body process in particular have really informed this discussion, because they are telling me, oh, I feel like there's a child here. And sometimes it's a child without a body, like an entity or spirit. And sometimes it's their inner child talking with them. They'll hear like a giggle, or they'll hear like the running of the feet that sound like kids running through the hallway, or these different ways it's shown up. They'll get a flash of an image of like bubbles blowing or a rainbow. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, I used to love rainbows as a kid. And I was like, so what stops you from loving them now? That kind of a thing. So it does come from that. And the point of discussing these different elements is for us to open up to more of ourselves, more to other people, to receive from other people, other bodies, to more possibilities, so that we can actually have what we've considered unobtainable. For all of us, over the course of our lives, at some point, we decided that certain things were unobtainable, impossible. And what I found is when we're actually willing to have exuberant living and look into all of these different archetypes of living and dying, when we're not the effect of our awareness of other people's choices, we actually get to have unimaginable things show up, miracles show up. And I don't say that word lightly. Some people throw that word around like and apply it to a lot of different things. They're just it's just, there can be just so many miraculous moments that that you can be a witness to when you're empowering other people. Like for those of you that are teachers and the mentors, and you have your own kids, when you are, you have this wonderful dynamic relationships in which you are empowering each other. Like there's all these different ways it can show up. And this is part of it. When we really have that, it's a lot easier to create the things that other people have told us is not possible. It's also been really helpful for releasing pain, physical pain, skeletal pain, mental, emotional pain, creating better and more expansive relationships. I do relationship coaching, and I love including the elements of living in my coaching. It really changes it. It really moves things along quicker for everybody involved, be it if I'm working with a singular person or the couple or throuple together. Letting go of past anchors, the trauma, abuse. Inner child is huge for this, huge, huge, huge for this. And we're going to talk about that a little bit if you'd like. Go ahead and put any questions or awarenesses you already have about your inner child in the chat. There's also just a deeper intimacy with yourself and with your body. Like you really become more and more in tune with your body when you're aware of these elements of living, including the inner child and your inner child. So thanks for the hearts and the love. I see y'all. Say hi if you're here. So just to overview again, the different categories of the elements of living are the influencers, the distractors, the door openers, the discoverers, the outlaws. We talked about one of the outlaws last week, right? The powers and the celebrants, and then also the different landscapes and worlds. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I always forget how many there are, because there's also so many examples within them. And so the inner child is an example of an influencer. And the key thing about knowing about all the different influencers, all those different elements of living and archetypes of living and dying, is that you get to recognize what's truly influencing you beyond your own knowing. What's distracting you is also really key. So influencers and distractors go hand in hand. And I'm trying to remember if we've talked about any of the distractors in this run of the series. I'm going to look because I'm curious, because that would be super helpful, I think. But yeah, we haven't gotten to talk about any of the distractors. Well, every time I asked, y'all were like, nope, not yet. So maybe you're not willing to look at what's distracting you from living exuberantly just yet. But I hope to get to talk about it with you at some point. Let me know. Maybe we'll get to talk about it in the Are You Living and Dying with Business call in November, maybe in the awakening class, maybe in a private session. But yeah, if you're not willing to look at what's distracting you, how are you going to stay on track toward the life that you'd really like to have? Okay. So the inner child, it's an influencer, and it influences you dynamically, often like unconsciously. Like a lot of us have stopped listening to our inner child, and not just put the hat over the face, but like it's like almost like a cartoon where like the hat goes over the whole body. It's like there's nobody there, and then you do like the hat game where you're like having multiple hats. You fragment yourself into 3, 4, 5 different pieces or more, and then you're wondering where you are, and they're switching the cups around or the hats around and around and around. That game with the cup game, and you're like, where are you? And then you're lifting it up, nope, not there. Lifting it up, nope, not there. And for us, a lot of us, when we have these moments where we're all of a sudden behaving like a younger version of ourselves, like all of a sudden our voice might even change. We sound younger, we're all of a sudden behaving younger, and we're like, why was I even doing that? Like, where did that even come from? Well, that might be your inner child kind of ramping up and awakening in that moment unconsciously to address something that's going on, to ask for a need that isn't really being met, be it attention or nourishment, affection, stimulation, movement, play. There's so many different things that our inner children will ask for, that if we're not in touch with them continuously and talking with our inner child on a continuous basis and integrating that information so that we can co-create with our body, well, then we all of a sudden start behaving like completely counter to what might work for us. And then later on, you might be filled with regret or shame, or you're like apologizing for stuff because like, I don't even know where that came from. Well, this will reduce a lot of those moments where you'll feel like you have to apologize for your actions, at least with respect to when the inner child's awakening. Maybe some other things are going on, and we can talk about that too. So I love playing with my inner child. Like, one, I work with kids, and I think one of the things that the kids love about playing with me and talking with me is that I'm so tapped into my inner child. I'm willing to roll around the floor. I'm willing to dance and sing and act the fool and not be worried about what anybody thinks about me. Like that, especially when I'm with other kids. Like you see other kids, like as if I'm a kid, you see that? Like they don't judge you for any of that. They're not like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Like adults will do. Right. And a lot of us, we do that as adults. Well, sometimes like joking affectionately, and sometimes because we have internalized where we weren't allowed to do that as kids. We were told, oh, stop acting crazy, behave yourself, you can't stay still, all these different things. And so we start then duplicating that and like propelling that into the future and then projecting that onto other people. Hi, thanks for that. Say hi and let us know where you are in the world. So um the the piece with that as well is it allows you to have a lot more fun. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm always looking to have a lot more fun. There's plenty of heavy right now. There's been a lot of heavy moments in the last couple of weeks. For certainly this last week for me with my body, and for me to be like, okay, what else would be nurturing? Like when you're like sick, like I was having a lot of stomach stuff this week and abdominal pains and things. And I was like, okay, what would be really fun? Like what was like the thing that was really nurturing to me when I was not feeling well as a kid? And that would work for me now. And what did I do? And I did this with some great friends, which thank you, y'all. You know, big shout out to Sam and Maggie and Mike. Thank you so much for Amanda and Kashmir, for my mom. And we sat down and we watched the Disney's Robin Hood. Which I hadn't seen in years. And I watch Disney movies and things all the time, but that one I hadn't seen in a while. And it was such a treat. And just as soon as the song in the beginning started, I don't know if y'all have seen it, I was like, and I started doing that. And it was so happy making, and it helped so much to alleviate the discomfort that I was going through. It was what you want, that little, the cuddly blankets that you used to like as a kid. Like I have those squishy blankets now as an adult. Like who else has those textures that really comfort them? You know, or there's certain, like, you know, we've talked about me and my pens and how I swirl the pen around. This started as a kid. I used to do this, you know, my fidgets. This is before fidgets were like approved thing, you know? And so when you listen to your inner child, it can actually help comfort you, the inner parts of you, all the inner good emotional bits of you, and the outer parts. It really helps you be like, remind you of what was really sweet and really, really caring for you and your body that maybe you haven't been prioritizing. Yeah, thanks, Angela, for that. I love that. And so the other piece with this, and this is going to be a big one. Many of us, well, there's two big things. So many of us were really aware of things even in the womb. And so there's stuff that you might not even have a memory of, a picture of, nobody has any photos of in your family. And yet there's an awareness of you in you from even when you were in the womb, of what was going on in your parents' worlds, what was going on in your mom's world, in her body. And that can also have been locked up into ourselves and into our awareness, into our realities. And then we start taking that into the world and being at the effect of it. So when we're actually aware of our inner child, we can start to unlock that as well. Because the point of all of these, remember, is to us unlock all of this stuff is lies. It's not true for us. So we can be more of our authentic selves. We can create joyful lives. We can have these impossibilities show up as possibilities. Okay. I love it. And not really, but I'm being a bit facetious when people tell me I can't do something, when people tell me something's not possible, because I'm a living example of so many different things that what I was told was not possible. And so is my family. Every single person in my family was told things were not possible. And then we've made it happen. We have created it. We didn't know exactly how it was going to show up, but we knew something was possible beyond what was being projected at us. And it still happens today. It happened even this week where someone was telling me, this is the way to go. This is the right way to do things. This is the only way. And if you don't do it, it doesn't work. And everything in my body and everything with my awareness of these elements of living so far has been a no about that. Now, here's the thing, just like our inner children in general are willing to change and pivot and move really quickly. They're willing to let go of points of views and choose something different at any time. And me being connected with my inner child and with my body, I'm also able to do that. So if all of a sudden the awareness it changes, and it's all of a sudden okay, yeah, sure, let's go. I will totally be like, all right, let's go. And I will go there. Even if right now it's so a no. It's so a no, but it's just right now. So where are you all listening to your inner children? Where was the last time that you kind of had this like, oh, that's right, I used to love this, or oh man, I haven't done this in so long, but if I know that if I do this right now, or I choose this right now, oh, it would be so great. It would be so like that, and are you willing to choose some more of that and have some more of that, some of this squeezes? When I hug a lot of my friends, they'll know that I'm like, oh, squeeze, and I actually say the word squeeze. And I do that with my kiddos. And then they start learning the word squeeze. And then they start asking for squeezes. And that might be one of the first words that they say to me, because they start connecting it with their body and this desire that's being met, this need that's being met by their body or for their body. Yes. Yes. Well, both actually. So one of the things that the inner child invites us to ask, and I'm going to put this in the chat and maybe you can play around with this today, is as simple as what would be fun today? What would be fun today? And actually include fun and prioritize fun. Thank you for being willing. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Yes, I'm willing and ready to choose more of that. And I have some soft, yummy blankets too. Yay! Yeah, what would be fun today? And I actually ask that when I'm already having fun, and I ask that when I'm in like pain, like I've been in pain this week and, nauseous and things like that. I had amazing moments this week. Last week we had our Soaring Beyond Definition call, the fall call, and all these amazing questions were sent in from around the world. And man, it moved a lot of energy. And the whole time, even as I was talking about this heavy stuff, like people were talking about suicide and not really knowing if life was worth living, and how can they recommit to living, and how can they stay connected to consciousness continuously, and all these different questions that they ask. If you haven't checked out the replay of that, for sure check it out. But one of the things even in the midst of that was, and what could be fun that we could do here, even if it's just me changing my pitch of voice or me dancing and singing for y'all, I'm willing to do it, just like I'm willing to do it with the kiddos that I see for speech and language and feeding and things like that. I'm like, let's go. And for the teenagers that I work with, they'll roll their eyes, but they smile, and it lightens the moment. So yay, whatever, I'll take it. I'll take a little smile. All of it counts. And that's what I invite, a lot of us as adults, when we're busy adulting, we often don't include fun in our adulting. And I completely, if adulting doesn't involve fun, then I get why we often go into reverting into like our childish ways that aren't necessarily what's going to be the most functional and effective now, because we still look like adults. We still have those adult responsibilities and things we'd like to create that are possible that weren't possible when we were kids, So include fun in your adulting, please. If you haven't already noticed, I've talked about sound and music and how you might be aware of your inner child in a certain way. And it might be through sound, it might be through other like visuals and things like that. Well, with the sound, and we mentioned this with the whistleblower before, the whistleblower elements of living, they really intersect and play with the inner child a lot. So I love, and I often think of kids when I think of flutes and the piccolo and things like that. And I don't know if you guys had to do the recorder classes when you were in elementary school. That was a thing back when I was growing up, where a lot of elementary schools in music class, you were learning how to play the recorder, which was another kind of flute-like wind instrument. And the other thing that intersects with this is the sounds of the shuffling of the cards, which we've also talked about. So check out the video of that if you haven't already. Maybe check it out again, because there's a lot of those cards that when we're learning letters, they were giving us different letters and numbers and shapes and colors on cards in school. Maybe you were getting those lessons from your parents or from teachers, and then they had to shuffle the cards. And so your associations with learning and communication as well can show up as with your inner child showing up when all of a sudden you're confronted with a new task or a challenging new skill that you're trying to learn. Sometimes the inner child will come up, and it may not be in a way that's effective. So just like acknowledge that in a way that's not going to really work for you. Because if we weren't taught kindly, if we had teachers or parents that when they were teaching us something new, they were yelling at us or they were belittling us, what they were judging the way that we learned, even though it was just as valid of a way of learning as anybody else, then that might come up every time or many times when we're learning these new things. And there's a way around that. And when we're willing to talk with our inner child, we can get around it, and we can not have that come up over and over again. I've had that be the case with a lot of my parents that I work with. When they're trying to teach something to their kid, they're thinking about how they were taught and all the stress around that, all the pressure. There very much was a right and wrong way of learning, and there was only one way. And then here I come in. I'm not really trying to save anybody, but I do come in and I'm like, hey, let's have some fun, and let's see which way your kid learns, and let's see which way you learn and how they connect and how they are different. Because it's also about knowing how differently our kids connect and learn and communicate and show up in the world and express themselves than we do. And it's really interesting because I often have to start with the parents' learning style, the parents' communication style, to then work on how the kid learns, because that's who is going to be then empowered to then empower the kid and work with them when I'm not there. But a lot of us haven't looked at that for ourselves. Like, what is our, not just communication style, but our learning style? And the inner child is a great invitation for us to look at that for ourselves and to not judge it, because the kids don't know about judgment or that there's a mistake, that word mistake, until adults teach it to them. And all of those are judgments. It's like, oh, you failed, that word, failed, mistake, all these words are judgments. What if there wasn't any mistakes? What if you haven't ever failed? It's just, okay, that happened. Now what's the next thing that you could do? And the kids are such a great invitation for that. I love this comment in the chat. One thing I love about children is they will dress in fun, whimsical clothes and never care that it matches. I had that today. It's so funny. So you can't see the earrings here, but this is like a jade earring, kind of gray. And yet I'm wearing dark blue, white, and red. My body asked for me to wear this bracelet that matches these earrings. But even if it doesn't match this outfit, but it was like, that's what's going to be fun. So let's do it. And oh my God, I'm loving it. And I'm loving playing with the noise of this. It's a little for the noise. Remember the sound again. And it's working for me. I like how this feels. These banging up against my, not really banging. They're like, caressing and like moving along my neck. And it's very nurturing. And so I'm going with it. And yes, kids are willing to do that. And when we are willing to play with our inner child a little bit more, we get to have a lot more fun with everything that touches our skin, that's on our bodies, that we ingest, the food, how kids are with food, and they're really playful and everything. As a feeding therapist, I get to do play with food again, and it's so much fun. And the parents, again, initially, they'll look at me like I'm crazy, and then they realize it works, and then they let it go. The other part of that comment, kids, they are totally comfortable and happy wearing a tutu and tights and a shirt that they love anywhere. Sometimes they'll wear the same thing over and over again until it's worn out or it's just really stinky and funky. So that's when it might not work for you as an adult, right? The rest of that comment is, and I want to be more in allowance of wearing what I love and more and more. That would be fun. Yeah. Like, and looking at the things that you might not even have considered. Like, I love going, I don't really like shopping, but when I do go shopping, I love being like, what's something I never have even considered wearing before? Like, I've never tried, a color I've never worn, a style I've never considered. And even if I don't buy it, I'll try it on. I'll truly consider it in that moment. And a lot of times there have been some new items that I've added to my repertoire and into my closet. And that's the thing that has either gotten me more money or has really nurtured my body more or has made me feel super beautiful on those days where you just wake up and you're like, ugh, this body, really? And you have those days sometimes when you're not really feeling like a fan of your body and you kind of would like something that'll help you feel beautiful again. And a lot of those out of the box, out of my definition of what I should wear clothing that my inner child has often invited me to try out have been those items. So very cool. Good luck with that and keep me posted. Post some of your new outfits in the group. I would love that. And I love how your background matches the pic of your top. Yep. I kind of did that on purpose. It was kind of nonlinear and following the awareness and it showed up this way. So thanks. The last thing that I want to mention with the inner child that is also connected to this adulting thing is time. Our inner children have no concept of time. That's why all of a sudden here you are, you could be in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whenever, and there'll be this moment that shows up and it's like you're 3 years old again. And it doesn't, for them, it had no concept of, oh, this much time has passed. For some of us, there's certain things, certain people, certain situations that it will totally take us to another moment. And it'll feel like as if it was right now or yesterday, like it's super fresh. And what if we actually that wasn't a bad thing? What if it wasn't like a traumatic thing to be aware of past, present, and future like that? And so the inner child works really beautifully with the other elements of living. There's a couple of them that relate to time. We haven't gotten to talk about them, but there are a lot of different elements of living that have time as a component. There's the Time Lord. We talked about the whistleblower last week with time a little bit. The Time Machine is another one. The clockmaker and the Gravedigger, the Grim Reaper, all of these will communicate with your inner child and will have it be where you're moving through time in a really different way than maybe other people let themselves function from. And this can allow you to create a lot more in a short period of time. Like I love using this we talk about this in the virtual writing retreat, where it's something happens when we're all together and we get to write so much more and it flows so much more. And one of the things that kind of shows up is not our inner children and our enthusiasm for the writing and the love of texts and stories. But then there's also some of the other elements will come in, like the Time Lord, that'll help us really flow and just bust out all of these constraints of time, of what we've been told about time. And I think that's really, really cool. Because kids, you tell them, you say, oh, it's so o'clock. And they're like, what time? Like they don't, it has no real relevance to them. And yes, you got to get to your appointments. You have to be considerate of other people's time. But as an adult, and what if we didn't put as much significance to it as we do? And the inner child doesn't. And so when you are in touch with it, you actually stop saying, oh, this has to happen at a certain time frame, otherwise it's bad, or I'm bad in some way. You don't put all this pressure on yourself, like, oh, I haven't done this by this age, because the inner child doesn't care about any of that stuff. And it could invite your body then to have that as a possibility, where maybe the people who have been able to have kids in their 40s and they've been told since their 20s that they're getting too old to have kids. Well, I suspect that some of them have not let that be relevant to them, and maybe they've tapped into their inner child. Maybe it's something else. There's a couple other considerations, of course, as well. So I invite you to play around with some of this stuff. I'm really excited to be able to also have this piggyback with our Family Fridays that are going to start this Friday, where we're going to start talking about all these different things that you can do and tools you can use to soar with your family and beyond your family. And it's matching this energy of how I function. Like, I don't have kids over here and the work I do with kids and families over here and then the energy work over there. It's all together. Just like this inner child example, like I ramp up my inner child even more in the presence of kids and even more in the presence of people who've been abused, who've been assaulted. Like, I increase that because they need it even more. Like, people who've been abused and traumatized in some way, they need that joyful, enthusiastic living more than people just like, I'm good, I'm okay. Like, that's just my personal point of view. And so I ramp it up more in their presence. It's not necessarily a matter of me acting more like a kid or being louder or being more jumpy, because that's not always honoring, but just being willing to be that sweetness that kids are around them, and be willing to laugh about things that maybe other people aren't willing to be laughing about is such a gift. And I think that's a way that all of us can be a gift to each other if we're willing. So on that note, have fun. Hope I see you on Friday for our Family Fridays. It's going to be at 9 a.m., an hour earlier than this series has been, 9 a.m. New York time. And there'll be replays of it. You can check it out in the group later on if you're not available to jump on live. Send me questions ahead of time if you have it. And please don't forget to vote for our next video series if you haven't already done so. I think it looks like the Speaking Fluent You is the lead topic right now. So I'm cool with that. I love talking about communication and speaking. Thank you. Oh, I love that comment. I have a comment here that says, you're a gift to me, and you're a gift to me as well. Thank you so much for being here. You are all a gift to me. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, let me know. Until next time, bye.